And joining us via Skype, Dr. Shahida Omar, Clinical Director at the Teddy Bear Clinic, and Apostle BJ Langa joins us in studio. And Debbie Howers is a clinical psychologist joining us on the line. We'll also have Pastor Moss Ntlantla, General Secretary for the Evangelical Alliance of South Africa. We'll start in studio. Good evening to you, Apostle Langa. And just looking at what's going on in these particularly vulnerable societies that are already deprived of many, not only recreational facilities, but there seems to be a vulnerability that is beyond what they can control. How then do we safeguard the most vulnerable from predators such as in this case?
Good evening, Cindy. It's such a sad kind of a story we can actually, find ourselves talking about tonight. But I believe that this also is one of those things that needs to be done in a very professional way. We need to go back again to the communities, bring down education, because I think we need to revise especially the level of power that has been given to men. And you need to understand that most men who carry meaning such power, they were also most educated from the Word of God by even the preachers to say that man is the head and man is the the one with the dunamis, or could I say the power in the household or in the community. But now the power that we received as men, or meaning as the male, meaning a figure in gender, is not to oppress, neither to also to hurt others, but the power is to create life and to bring forth protection. So now I believe that we need to start first with the education, because this thing is going on and on and on, and you find vulnerable children and also women who need our help, but also our protection, but we're not giving them. So now it's calling for that education.
Yeah, but I mean, we have a number of awareness creation campaigns, such as the 16 Days of No Violence Against Women and Children. Dr. Omar, what more can be done? Are there any warning signs that the communities can be vigilant of any, be it bogus pastors or false messengers, as we've seen in this case?
Well, I want to say one thing is I think that we need to realize there's no clear profile or typical characteristics of sex offenders or perpetrators like the pastor that has been mentioned. So people need to be on the lookout for any kind of interest that is pursued on women and children. But I think children are so vulnerable and marginalized, and the misuse of power and authority is often exercised. So we need to realize that it could be the likes of you and me, from religious leaders to political leaders to anybody out there. And it is usually your preferential abusers or career abusers who find themselves in settings where they have easy access and availability to children. So this is something that we also need to ensure that there is thorough and rigorous screening and vetting, where they need to go not only through the police clearance, but they need to go through rigorous assessment measures to ensure that they are safe to work with children. So yes, you are absolutely correct. We've done so many outreach programs, awareness raising programs, but yet that doesn't seem to have made a dent. And it requires more, I think, concerted efforts on different levels, where both civil society and government departments need to work in collaboration to ensure the safety and protection of children. But I also think that we need to see that our law enforcement agencies become more serious in the punishment that is meted out to predators, to ensure that they do not repeat these offenses, or that it sends out a very strong message to other potential would-be offenders.
All right, please stay on the line, Dr. Omar. We have Debbie Howers, a clinical psychologist as well. Debbie, how possible is it to have a safety net around children and women who are already in a vulnerable situation where there isn't adequate support structures or even defense mechanisms?
It is a very difficult topic because in places of any authority or power. It could happen at any place. Never, I know it can happen in the teachers, with pastors, with governments, at any place in power. There's always the possibility of this occurring. So it is very difficult because often the individual that's going to be a perpetrator might have been exposed to that kind of perpetration as a child themselves, and then it does continue and repeat. So it's very difficult to ascertain exactly who, which people in authority are going to elicit such behaviors.
Yeah, please stay on the line, Debbie. We also have Apostle Langa in studio. Just to get back to not only discussing the issue intellectually, but ensuring that those communities are resourced with the necessary requirements to protect the most vulnerable. Do you think that resources are not necessarily aligned to those that are already disadvantaged?
Yeah, I think so. They are not, and we need to actually put more effort in that. And make sure that, especially in those areas, people are quite resourced in order to be able, as you heard that, meaning the evangelist also said, the woman there, that they've done it. They've went out there, they've done outreach, and they've tried to bring down, even as I said, education into educating the communities on how to live with one to another. So we need resources, yes, but Cindy, we shouldn't actually shun away from the truth, because now this is not just a physical problem. It is a spiritual kind of an encounter that we also need to look at it and understand that the perpetrator is not even the man himself. The devil also has, he exists. People need to be truthful. We live in a time where people, when we talk about such forces, they think we're just talking about forces. Those are the forces that wants to steal harmony in the community. And you need to know that actually in the very same situation, we are not losing only the child. We are even losing a potential father, a potential brother. So we are losing both. But now, unfortunately, we're losing even those that are infantry and those that are also, vulnerable at the teenage stage. Yes.
All right, we'll take your calls on 011-542-2186. Should we name and shame these bogus pastors and those that groom vulnerable children for their own sexual pleasures, as sick as that sounds? David, thanks for calling us. You in Mpumalanga. Good evening to you.
Yes, good evening, Cindy.
What's your comment or question?
My comment is that, Cindy, these said-to-be preachers, I think they must get the harshest punishment.
We're listening, David.
Yeah, because you see, I don't see any point when you are preaching the word of God. You come up to raping children, you come to raping our sisters, our mothers, but you say you are a preacher. You see, preachers must have morals. You see, they must look after our children, look after our mothers. They must be disciplined people. But it seems now that they are just after our money, you see. Because they go there, they don't even, remember when Jesus was arrested there, when he was entering Jerusalem, he threw away all these people who were collecting money there to show that money is not needed in church, you see. But these people are dishonestly, you see. So I think they must be punished, you see. And I don't understand why the government take it lenient, you see, because the government must put laws that are very harsh to the preachers. Thank you, Cindy.
All right, thank you so much, David. We appreciate it. We also have Pastor Moss Nhla, General Secretary of the Evangelistical Alliance of South Africa. Pastor Nhla, good evening to you. Just to add on to this debate, especially what the law can do, the communities have cried for harsher sentencing. We haven't really seen an example that deters this kind of behavior, let alone having a sexual offenders registrar where people can be looked up in the communities where they serve.
That's correct. I think that you do need harsh measures for people in position of responsibility and lead and power, because power, whether it is the power of a teacher who works in a school and abuses children, or the power of a priest who abuses those that are under their care, or even the president, for that matter, that anybody with power, the temptation to abuse that power seems to be always accompanying those people who are holders of power. And so I think that greater levels of accountability ought to be imposed on them. But I think to get back to the other side of that same coin, the tragedy with all of this abuse is that many of the people that go to these churches are poor people. And the vulnerability of the poor is always an issue that makes them open to abuse of people who make them eat snakes or eat grass or drink petrol. It's always the poor who are gullible and who are desperate for a breakthrough in their lives who end up in the position where they are abused by people who are like that. So to the degree that we can empower the poor sufficiently to take responsibility for their own lives, I think that would be a way of getting at a solution.
Yes, Pastor, please hold on the line. We have our second caller, Zatu in Soweto. Good evening to you and welcome.
Good evening, Cindy.
Hi.
Cindy and your guest, good evening as well. We should really, as Christian leaders, the Christian leadership should really show remorse, Cindy. We should suffer when others are subjected to such a gruesome violence in our presence. The Christian leadership so far, it's so scattered. It doesn't show a unity in remorse. We need to show that and collectively march. Maybe one Sunday, maybe one Saturday, the whole Christian community, it should be on the street and say, not in my name, not in the body of Christ's name. It cannot be. Yes,
much appreciated, Putwame. I hear you loud and clear. Joel in Gauteng, good evening to you. Welcome. Hi, Joel.
Hello.
Yeah, good evening. How are you?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, can I continue?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yes, my contribution stands like this. Spiritual warfare has no respect for humanity. And we must look at the people who are called by our Savior, Jesus Christ, and people who just went into the ministry on their own accord. So that must not be confused with those who are called, because you must report somewhere to lead the folk, meaning the sheep.
Joel, that's exactly the CRL Commission had come up with proposals to register all pastors, or rather the various religious disciplines, so that we know who's operating legitimately or not. But thanks so much for that call. Dr. Omar, just in terms of vigilance, again, it seems more that we're operating in silos with all these activities, not in my name, and highlighting the plight of women, hashtag men are trash, etc., that we're not having a collaborative effort, one direction, one vision as a nation to curb all of these practices. Dr. Omar, you still there? All right, we've lost Dr. Omar. Debbie, just in your experience, when you go to underprivileged or distressed communities, what in the world is there to assist them? Because you and I can discuss this ventilated in the comfort of our spaces, but we know that there are communities that are simply left out on their own volition without any defense.
Yes, that's right. And I think one of the lessons that has to be learned from this experience is to teach our children how to discern and not to assume that just because a person is in a place of power or authority to completely bow down to them or to listen to them or to succumb to any of their abusive kind of acts. So it is up to parents to always educate children as to the morals of right and wrong and to explain to them not to listen to authorities that are older or in power. And it's also for the adults also to be able to discern. As you say, especially in impoverished areas, they might have a tendency to to succumb to our authorities, especially as the previous caller did mention, when they're in dire straits or very poor and all that, they will resort to anything. So I think discerning is one of the biggest lessons that everyone needs to learn out of that, and to be educated.
Yeah, more like a victim support, or rather to empower young people. It's so unfortunate that it's almost we're creating a culture of distrust or perpetuating that. Joanne in Mpumalanga, good evening to you. All right, we lost Joanne. Apostle Langa, again, in those communities that we talked about, this is nothing new, really, if we were to be honest. We come from a very violent past, and growing up, we know that particularly in the townships, before we had the electricity, etc., all of these things would happen without any accountability.
That's
so
true.
2017 and all the wonderful programs we have and the resources, we're still sitting with this problem.
Yeah.
Beyond what we say as the rhetoric and the programs, is there what the community of Tafelsig can take away if they cannot rely on police or the right convictions, and they cannot rely even on their own that lives among them?
Yeah. We cannot leave away prayer, which is one of the mechanisms that will be of a need in times such as this, in terms of, bringing comfort to the hearts of the families, because you need to understand that not only that those children or that child is hurt, but now you're also hurting the family as a whole. So prayers need to be erected there, and then the community must come together. You see, it is in such time as this where unity had to be the meaning song of the community. Everybody must come out of his or her house, though whether your child is not the one that is inflicted, and you come on board and you help. And the other thing which I think is it's important, we need also to, as we are rallying with this and trying to get these perpetrators, and even to also bring a message across to the preachers, to really stand the moral grounds and also present a good presentation of who Christ is. But again, we need to go back to the boys, our boys. And as we have this problem, as you said, that this could be the effects of our past, but now if we can start those programs again, but with the boys, and also educate the boys and restrain the boys and teach them, also when they look at women, what is it that they are actually seeing, and
not the misogyny
that
that we seem to practice in this country. Let's
Yes.
take a caller, Tabane in Hillbrow. Good evening to you. Thanks for your patience.
Hello, ma'am. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm very grateful of what we've been hearing about these fake pastors. This one is just a tip of the iceberg about what these pastors are doing, especially here in Banket, Hillbrow, Banket and Aselin, etc. You know what? The poor, vulnerable children and poor, vulnerable housewives, they are being taken for advantage. I would like if the government can make rigorous checks around all these churches. You see, school children, they are being lured as if they are being helped for studies, whilst these pastors, they take chances of them. Really, this one is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, Tabane, having spoken to the CRL Commission as well, the thing is the communities have to lay a charge of abusive practices within the church or within the environment they live in. So it's not something that the law can necessarily impose on itself. I don't know if that is of any use to you, but thanks so much for your call. Dr. Omar is back with us, clinical psychologist with the Teddy Bear Clinic, or director rather, with the Teddy Bear Clinic. Dr. Omar, I mean, in your efforts, I don't know if we talk about victim empowerment, and especially to detect early warning signs of somebody that is trying to groom a potential victim, whether those programs have been implemented and how far widespread are they?
Those programs have been implemented, but you've asked something very important. How far widespread are they? It isn't consistent, it isn't regular, and not sufficient work has been done on the ground. When we talk about sufficient work, meaning that with children at ECD facilities, early childhood development facilities, and primary school and senior school, because often groomers or pedophiles, what we find is that they would prey on children very innocently. Well, so we think it is, with innocuous operations, probably assisting with school homework, assisting with any other chores in fetching or babysitting children. These are the kind of common things where they slowly break the barriers or erode the barriers. And eventually, the child feels so obligated that it's very difficult for a child to resist or break away or even say no, because as it has been alluded earlier, that this is the adult who holds a position of status, power, authority, and he's also offering something in exchange for sexual favor. So it is very difficult for a child to break away and say no. But I want to add to something. People on the show have been talking about the law enforcement agencies and accountability. And I believe that there needs to be a synergy between the way a perpetrator is handled and managed and treated, the way a victim is managed and treated, and the way the whole judiciary addresses these issues. Because we're finding that at station level, police are often turning away victims, or the way the victims are received, where they are humiliated, shamed, blamed, named, and interrogated so brutally that it deters them from going any further or pursuing the matter. Then if we look at the court system, even the delays, it could take anything between 2 and 6 years, where cases are repeatedly postponed, which only frustrates and, of course, re-victimizes the actual victim, the secondary trauma. But again, and the way the perpetrator, I mean, if we look at the opportunities for perpetrators to prey out there, because there aren't sufficient or strict measures, the punishment that is meted out does not fit the crime. It's often laughable and a joke, and that's why I feel that there needs to be synergy and things have to be taken more seriously.
Dr. Omar, we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Dr. Shahida Omar, clinical, or rather director at the Teddy Bear Clinic. She's a clinical psychologist, and Debbie House, a clinical psychologist. Thanks, Debbie, for joining us. We'll wrap it up with Pastor Moss Ntla, General Secretary of the Evangelical Alliance of South Africa. A question from one of our viewers: where is the church when it matters the most, besides being politicized and focused on other matters beyond what is important?
I think that I'm sorry I missed most of what was said because the line was bad, but in terms of the pastors that you've talked about, it's very easy at this stage to have all manner of criminals masquerading as pastors. And in that way, it is possible to just color or paint everybody with the same brush. But that doesn't solve the problem. I think that our criminal justice system should be able to identify a criminal by whatever clothes they are wearing. And I think that for the churches, they are quite clear with regards to the fact that these people are rogue elements within the church.
Pastor Ntla, we're going to have to leave it there. Very briefly, Apostle Langa. Again, I suppose the warning and being empowered and ensuring the safety of communities. What other forums are there? Are you personally involved in similar programs?
No, we are. We are involved, and I'm personally involved because, we don't only stand as pastors, but we stand as men. First, before we become pastors, bishops, apostles, we are men, and we also are brothers, we are fathers. So it is imperative, as I said, that to raise also a boy child in that manner, to understand, from zygote to fetus to infantry, becoming a girl, understand the importance of the seed, because we know that it's a spiritual warfare and the enemy is after.
Yeah, but I mean, these are communities that seemingly are under the spell of these bogus pastors.
Yes,
so,
yes.
What kind of...
Yeah, but it also
are there?
tells you. Yeah, it tells you about these are territorial, forces that operates. It will tell you that that in Tafelsig, that's exactly what they have been experiencing for many years. And now measures, or meaning very critical measures, need to be taken forth.
All right,
And
we're going to have to leave it there.
No problem
Much
there.
appreciated, and you at home, thanks as well for participating. We'll take a quick ad break. ANN7 Prime is back just after this.